What happens when a woman from a fake HOA calls fake officers to evict an elderly neighbor from his own property? She had no idea who he really was. What happened next made the whole neighborhood rethink who really holds the power here. My name's Calvin Merriweather. I'm 58 years old, retired after serving 26 years in the Bureau. No, I'm not one of those suit and sunglasses agents you see on TV. I worked the field, the grit, the street level, bank fraud, public corruption, domestic terror. And believe me, nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the madness that moved in 2 doors down from me last spring in Crestfield Ridge Estates. They call her Karen. Of course they do. Blonde bob, too much lipstick for 8 a.m., high-end yoga gear like she just came from solving the climate crisis at Pilates. But her favorite workout? Policing smiles and sunshine, especially when they come from people like me. Let me back it up a little. That Saturday morning was smooth as butter. Early June sun, birds chirping like they were paid to, and me, I was out back building birdhouses for the local kids. I'd been saving scraps of cedar wood from an old shed I tore down last winter. Some of these kids didn't have much, and watching them paint little roofs and pretend to be architects for a day? That was peace. My kind of Saturday. I had on my retired but still watchin' t-shirt. Little joke I wore with pride. Coffee in one hand, cordless drill in the other. I was attaching a simple swing gate between my yard and old Miss Geneva's so her grandbabies could run through without needing to ask every time. Just a man doing something neighborly. Felt good. Then I heard it. That cough. You know the one. That theatrical, attention-starved, I'm about to make this your problem kind of cough. I turned. And there she was. Karen stood on the sidewalk like she was surveying FEMA damage. Hands on hips, sunglasses too big for her face, lips pursed like she tasted something sour but was too proud to spit. Excuse me, she called out, clipboard in hand like some low-rent inspector. I nodded politely. Morning. Her eyes dropped to my drill. That's not HOA-approved hardware, she said like she just discovered I'd built a meth lab. You're using galvanized nails, aren't you? I stared for a second, trying to process whether this woman really cared about the metal composition of nails I used on a swing gate. Ma'am, I said, still calm, these are screws. For wood. This is my fence. Not just yours, she snapped. It faces community land. Now let me make something clear, that community land was a patch of weedy grass behind the trash bins, home to exactly 2 dandelions and 1 feral cat. Nobody used it. Karen just needed a hill to die on, and apparently today that hill had my fence on it. I held up my drill. You're welcome to inspect the screws, but I promise you they ain't starting any fires. Her lips curled. I'll be submitting a violation report, she said, tapping on her phone. This is not how we maintain standards in Crestfield Ridge. I chuckled, mostly to stop myself from saying something regrettable. Well, good morning to you too. Karen wasn't done. Oh no. 10 minutes later, she was back. Not alone this time. She brought her husband, or maybe it was her accountant, a man in a salmon-pink polo and boat shoes who looked like he ironed his khakis with holy water. He stood there behind her like a backup singer, arms crossed, trying to look tough and failing miserably. They watched me paint with the kids. Watched me laugh, hand out juice boxes, cheer as 7-year-old Danny drilled his first nail, crooked as a politician, but the kid was proud. They watched like joy was a crime scene. And then Karen said the thing. I don't feel safe with that many unsupervised minors running around. I froze. Unsupervised? Ma'am, I was right there, handing out granola bars like a schoolteacher. And all these kids? From this neighborhood. Every single one of them. I walked over slowly. Karen, are you suggesting I'm a danger to children? Her husband stepped in. It's just a concern. There are insurance liabilities when unsanctioned gatherings happen on community property. Community property. He was pointing at my backyard. I leaned in just a bit. This is my land. My grass. My chairs. My lemonade. And my business. Karen adjusted her sunglasses. Well, I've called the HOA. And we'll be contacting neighborhood safety enforcement if this continues. Now, I should have known then. That line, neighborhood safety enforcement. Nobody in a normal town says that unless they're about to pull some nonsense. I had no idea just how far she'd go. That evening. Around 6 p.m., the kids were gone. The sun had dipped behind the trees and I was cleaning up paint cups when I heard tires on gravel. Not just tires, a gravel growl, the kind you hear when someone's trying to make an entrance. A white SUV pulled up. No plates on the front. On the side? Big black letters, HOA Enforcement Unit. Looked like it came from the dollar store version of a police catalog. 2 men stepped out, one bald, stocky, chewing gum like it owed him money. The other, tall and lanky, holding a clipboard. Both wore black polos with fake badges sewn on, some nonsense about residential safety ops. One even had a duty belt. For what? A walkie-talkie and expired breath mints? Sir, Gumchewer started, we're here on behalf of the Homeowners Association regarding a violation. I squinted. Who are you? We're licensed neighborhood compliance officers. You got a license to impersonate law enforcement? That rattled clipboard boy. Karen popped out from behind the SUV like she was hiding in the trunk. They're here to conduct a wellness inspection. Given the number of children unsupervised on this property earlier, I swear, if you ever want to see a grown man go from relaxed to ready, watch a former federal agent get accused of endangering children on his own lawn. I straightened up. The air around me went dead calm. You brought fake cops to my home, I said slowly. Karen blinked. They're not fake. They're volunteers. I pointed at Gumchewer. You wearing a body cam? No, but badge number. Karen interrupted. That's not necessary. Lady, let me tell you something. I've seen real enforcement. I've worn real badges. What you just did, that's a threat. You put two untrained strangers on my property in uniform to intimidate a retired federal agent and accuse him of harming children. They all looked at each other like the air had just turned cold. Then I reached into my garage, pulled out my lockbox, opened it slowly, and held up my old, shiny, still valid, bureau-issued identification card. FBI. Retired. My name. My number. My seal. Karen's sunglasses slipped down her nose a little. Clipboard boy took a step back. Gumchewer looked like he just smelled ammonia. You all have 5 seconds to get off my property before I call the actual police, I said, low and calm. Karen tried to sputter something, but I turned to her and added, next time you want to play make-believe, do it at your book club. Not on my lawn. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how deep this madness goes or what she pulled the very next day. Stick around. You ever try to enjoy a quiet breakfast, then realize you're being watched? Not just neighbor peeking through blinds, watched? I mean, the kind of stare down that drills into your spine like somebody already drafted your obituary and is checking for punctuation. That was my Monday morning. I was on the porch with a mug of chicory coffee, humming an old Al Green tune. My wife, Denise, was inside folding laundry and fussing over the grandbaby's hair for daycare. Everything in our little piece of suburban heaven was still. Except Karen. Standing across the street. With binoculars. Binoculars. I set my coffee down. You good over there? I called out. She lowered the lenses like she'd just been caught spying on national security. Oh. Just birdwatching, she shouted back. Birdwatching? At 7:15 a.m.? Facing my house? I waved it off. Maybe she really was looking for birds. Maybe she thought I was a bird. Who knows? But then came the envelope. Same day. 11:06 a.m. A man in a neon vest, not postal, not UPS, just some random fellow with a clipboard and a Bluetooth earpiece, walked up my driveway like he'd done it 100 times. No knock. No doorbell. Just placed a big white envelope on my welcome mat, turned, and walked off like he had more assignments to complete. I picked it up. No return address. Just my name printed in bold black ink, Calvin Merriweather. Inside? 1 page. Typed. All caps. This is a courtesy notice regarding multiple violations observed on your property. Unauthorized gathering of minors without parental documentation. Erection of unauthorized fixtures, swing gate. Use of non-standard fencing hardware. Disorderly conduct on community grounds. At the bottom. Crestfield Ridge Emergency HOA Oversight Division. First of all, what kind of HOA needs an emergency oversight division? Second of all, there's no such thing. I'd been through the neighborhood covenants. Top to bottom. More than once. They had 2 real officers, both of whom I'd spoken to, and neither of them had any idea who Karen was appointing or what she thought she was running. I'd already shut down the fake cop stunt. Now she was escalating. Paper trail. Threats. Made-up departments. I stood on that porch a long time. Felt that heat in my chest. That old feeling. The one I left behind with the badge. That itch when somebody thinks they can twist the law and smear your name like you're too old or too tired to fight back. That's when Denise came out. She held the baby on her hip, hair wrapped in a bright red scarf, eyes narrowed. What's that? She asked. I handed it to her. She read it. Twice. Then she looked at me and said, flat as a cutting board, you want me to talk to her? Now let me tell you something, when your wife offers to handle it, that ain't diplomacy. That's the United Nations getting ready to impose sanctions. But I shook my head. No. Not yet. The gate incident. Next day, I get a knock on the door. It's old Mr. Travis, 74 years young, walks with a limp, always smells like aftershave and peppermint. Calvin, he says, you might want to come take a look at this. We walk to the side of the house. The swing gate, the one I installed for Miss Geneva's grandkids, is gone. Gone. Not broken. Not damaged. Not reported. Just removed. Only thing left were the holes in the posts and a pile of wood slats laying neatly beside the fence like someone dismantled it carefully. I bent down. Screws gone. Boards stacked. No trash, no mess. It was surgical. Mr. Travis scratched his chin. Saw two folks in gray polos out here early this morning. Thought it was city work. Guess not. My fists clenched. Now I knew what Karen was up to. She was trying to provoke me. To get me to lose my cool, raise my voice, maybe make a scene. That's how they win. They want the headline to read "Retired Agent Flips Out in Suburbia." Not gonna happen. But I wasn't about to let it slide either. A community hearing. Wednesday afternoon, I get a notice slipped under my garage door, another invitation from the so-called Emergency HOA Oversight Division, this time demanding I attend a hearing about my conduct. Let me pause right here. A hearing. In a neighborhood with 82 homes and 3 working stop signs. Apparently, I was scheduled to appear at the Community Rec Center that Saturday. No legal authority, no proper signatures, and no mention of a lawyer. Just attendance required. And guess who the signature on the bottom belonged to? Karen L. Lidge, Acting Chair, Neighborhood Order Task Force. I had to sit down and laugh. She gave herself a promotion. Saturday, the showdown before the showdown. I showed up. Oh, I showed up. Khakis pressed, white dress shirt, FBI retirement pin on the collar. Denise came with me rocking her Sunday church hat like she was headed to the pulpit. We entered the rec center at 10 a.m. sharp. Inside? Folding chairs in a circle. Coffee table with expired creamer. Karen seated at the head, arms crossed, flanked by her husband and 2 folks I'd never seen in my life, one with a clipboard, one typing furiously on a laptop like he was cracking national security codes. She stood. Mr. Merriweather, she began, thank you for attending. We appreciate your willingness to face these serious concerns directly. I sat. Denise sat beside me. I folded my hands in my lap like I was back at Quantico listening to a rookie explain ballistics. Karen continued, you've been cited for unauthorized events, construction without permission, aggressive language, and intimidation. I didn't interrupt. I waited. Then she added, we're also reviewing footage of your behavior towards safety officers dispatched for community wellness. That did it. I stood calmly. Karen, let me ask you one question. She blinked. Who gave you the authority to remove private property from my land? She opened her mouth. Closed it. I turned to clipboard guy. You with the HOA? No, ma'am, no, sir. I'm just a volunteer. From where? He paused. Online. Exactly. I faced Karen again. You filed fake documents. You organized impersonators. You entered my yard without permission. You removed property. You harassed minors. And you dared bring that circus to my home. The room got quiet. Then I reached into my folder and laid down a printout. My rights. Local zoning code. HOA bylaws. Every clause she violated. I tapped the table. You're not just out of line. You're playing with legal fire. The walkout. Denise stood up beside me. We're done here, she said. We walked out. Heads high. Calm. No shouting. No threats. Just silence heavy enough to crush cement. I didn't know what Karen would do next. But I knew one thing. This wasn't about fences anymore. This was war. This is it. The moment everything tips. What happens next will flip the whole neighborhood upside down. You cannot miss the fire that's coming. You ever walk into a room where you know they were just talking about you? Really talking. The kind of whispering where folks lean in too close and hush too fast when you open the door. That's the look I saw on my neighbors' faces the morning after the hearing. They had the decency to look embarrassed. A few waved weak hellos like I couldn't tell their palms were sweating. The rest avoided eye contact like I was contagious. I wasn't mad. Not even disappointed. I was focused. Because that woman, Karen L. Lidge, self-appointed queen of the homeowners association that never was, had crossed a line so bold, so aggressively stupid, it had left me with only 2 options. Let it slide and hope it fizzled. Or put her operation under a microscope so hot it would melt her clipboard. You already know which one I picked. I didn't need revenge. What I needed was evidence. See, this wasn't just Karen being nosy. This was organized harassment dressed up in HOA drag. She'd fabricated titles, manipulated neighbors, impersonated safety officers, and tried to paint me, a retired federal agent with more background checks than a security vault, as some kind of community threat. That wasn't just petty. That was illegal. I spent the next 2 days on my porch, not resting but watching. And not just her. Everyone. Movement patterns. Deliveries. Who she met with. When. I logged it all. She'd gotten real comfortable out there, talking to folks like she was city council. Even had the nerve to install a folding sign on her lawn that read, CRHAZ, Crestfield Ridge Hazard Assessment Zone, Active Oversight. Hazard assessment? Was she expecting biohazards or just more swing gates? She even roped in 2 teenage boys from the next block to help her patrol, paid them in gas cards and volunteer hours. Every afternoon they walked the sidewalks wearing matching vests and clip-on badges that looked like they came out a cereal box. I kept track. Every interaction, every paper drop, every false claim she tried to log. And when she slipped up, I had it on camera. Saturday. I knew she'd take the bait. I placed a wooden birdhouse on the community lawn. Nothing big. Just one of the ones the kids had made. The same ones she claimed were a public risk. I stuck a tiny sign next to it that said, Donated by the Merriweather family with love. Not 2 hours later, I heard her voice from across the street. Unauthorized object on HOA-controlled land. I didn't even flinch. Within 20 minutes, she marched up with her clipboard, sunglasses pushed high like battle armor, and those 2 safety boys in tow. She stood over the birdhouse like it had personally insulted her. Remove it, she said. Why? I asked. She squinted. Violation of visual cohesion. No permits. No official approval from the committee. What committee? Karen blinked. The committee. That doesn't exist. Well, maybe not to you, but I stepped forward. You bring anyone else on this lawn today, Karen, make sure they've got real authority. Not clip-ons. And especially not with badges that say Neighborhood Recon. This ain't a spy movie. That's when she said it. Fine. I'm done playing nice. You're about to see real consequences. 3 hours later, I was on my porch grilling when I saw it. 2 white SUVs, no front plates again. But this time, they had strobes. Fake strobes. Mounted to the dashboard like they belonged to some kind of emergency unit. Logos slapped on the doors read, URSO, Urban Residential Safety Organization. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. URSO? That sounded like a diet supplement, not law enforcement. For men got out. Black pants, black boots, black shirts, and black gloves, trying way too hard. One had a radio the size of a toaster strapped to his chest. Another wore aviators like he was waiting on a casting call for Cops 2. HOA crackdown. Karen was out front, arms folded like a general watching her troops land. I didn't move. I didn't run. I didn't yell. I just opened my garage, went to my filing cabinet, and calmly removed a small leather-bound case. Then I walked out front, slow and steady, and waited. They approached like they were expecting resistance. You could tell. The wide-legged stance, the puffed chest, the hand on the hip like someone might draw a weapon over a birdhouse. The lead one spoke. Sir, we're here on behalf of the HOA Oversight Enforcement to issue a community compliance intervention. You know impersonating law enforcement is a felony, right? I asked, deadpan. He flinched. Excuse me? Let me say it slow, I replied. This logo, this uniform, these strobes, they're not real. And if you so much as step 1 inch onto my lawn without state credentials, you're going to meet someone real. Karen interjected. Calvin, they're certified responders. Certified by who? You? Pinterest. That shut her up. Then I reached into my jacket, and I pulled out the one thing she couldn't fake. My FBI badge. Retired. But valid. Clean. With full legal standing for identification and escalation protocols. I held it up. 1 beat. 2. Then everything changed. Those officers went pale. The lead guy actually stepped back. One whispered, "Oh shoot," under his breath. Karen blinked so hard her sunglasses nearly flew off. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't threatening. I wasn't even smiling. I was calm, controlled, done. Here's what's gonna happen, I said. You're going to turn around. You're going to get in those Dollar Tree cruisers. And you're going to tell your supervisor, aka Karen, that if she ever sends another fake unit, her next HOA meeting will be at county court. Silence. Then one of the fake officers broke. I didn't know, man. I swear. She said it was a community volunteer gig. She lied, I said. Now go. They did. So did Karen. No fight this time. Just a walk of shame so long it should have come with commercial breaks. That night, I sat on the porch again. Same chair. Same mug. Same wind chimes humming soft above me. But now, there was peace. Not because the problem was gone, no, but because the truth had been shown. And truth? That travels fast in quiet neighborhoods. Folks started texting, knocking, waving from afar. Mr. Travis brought sweet tea. Miss Geneva sent pie. People were waking up. Not just to Karen, but to what happens when you let folks invent power where none exists. To what happens when you stay silent too long. We've hit the peak, but the dust hasn't settled. What came next shocked the entire block. And trust me, you need to see who flipped sides when the truth came out. I never liked being the center of attention. You don't join the bureau because you want applause. You do it because something inside you burns hotter than the nonsense around you. Because when everyone else says, that's not my problem, you stand up anyway. But that next morning? That porch of mine might as well have been the mayor's office. I opened the door to find 3 people standing there with casserole dishes, and I hadn't died, mind you. Miss Geneva sent cornbread. Travis brought sweet potato pie. Somebody else dropped off peach cobbler so sweet it nearly fixed my back pain. Denise peeked out the window and shook her head. I told you. You let a fool act bold for long enough and the whole neighborhood either joins M or watches M burn out. Burn out, indeed. Karen hadn't stepped foot outside since the badge moment. Her SUVs disappeared overnight. That ridiculous URSO sign vanished too, poof, like it had never existed. But the damage was already done, not to me but to her. Because Crestfield Ridge finally opened its eyes. A week later, I got an official letter, official, from the actual HOA board. The real one. Black ink, letterhead, 3 signatures at the bottom. They wanted to meet. Apparently, Karen's shadow committee had been operating without any actual votes, documentation, or authorization. All those titles? All those flyers? Total fabrication. Nobody approved them. Nobody even saw them. She'd been piggybacking on old bylaw revisions and bullying folks into compliance. But now that folks had seen the light, they were ready to make some noise. I showed up to the HOA rec hall dressed like Sunday morning. People were already gathered, and for once they weren't whispering. They were talking. Loud. Open. Fired up in that quiet way grown folks get when they've been played long enough. The board chair, Mrs. Whitley, a tall, firm woman in a green pantsuit and church pearls, called the meeting to order. Karen? Oh, she was there. Sitting 2 rows back. Sunglasses off. Makeup on. Smiling like she hadn't just tried to install a civilian militia in a retirement community. Mr. Merriweather, Mrs. Whitley said, you've been asked to speak first. I didn't prepare notes. I didn't need to. I walked up to the podium and looked out at everyone, black, white, old, young, veterans, widows, teachers, retirees. And I told them everything. Not just about the fake cops. Not just about the forged letters. But about the pattern, the intimidation, the lies, the manipulations she used to convince folks they had no say. Then I said this. There's a sickness in quiet neighborhoods. It starts small, a clipboard, a fake title, a few volunteers. Then one person decides they're the law. That we don't belong. That they can twist the rules until they wrap around our necks. But what happened here? What we did? We stood up. We said, not today. Not on this street. And now we take that power back. There was no applause. Not right away. Just silence. But the kind that hums. The kind that vibrates in the floor because it's full of truth. Then Miss Geneva stood. And clapped once. Then again. And the room followed. The board opened the floor. Motioned to remove Karen L. Litch from any and all HOA-adjacent activity, present or future. Seconded. Voted. Passed. Unanimously. Not one, no. Not even from Karen's husband, who, by the way, sat in the back with his head down like he just realized they'd canceled his golf membership. Karen didn't speak. Didn't stand. Just stared ahead like the walls were talking to her. Some folks would call that a loss. I call it accountability. A few days passed. Things settled. Then one evening, just as the sun dipped behind the oaks, there was a knock at my door. I opened it. Karen. Hair up. No makeup. No sunglasses. Just tired. She looked like someone who'd finally seen her own reflection and didn't like what looked back. I came to say something, she began. I stepped outside. Closed the door behind me. She took a breath. I was wrong. About a lot. I thought I was helping. I thought order meant safety. I didn't realize I was doing harm. I didn't say anything. She looked down. I'm stepping away from everything. The signs, the forms, all of it. You didn't deserve any of what I did. Now let me be clear, this wasn't a Hallmark moment. I didn't hug her. I didn't say, it's okay. Because it wasn't okay. And grown folks know the difference between grace and cheap forgiveness. But I looked her in the eyes and said, people make mistakes. But power without humility? That ain't a mistake. That's a choice. She nodded. Tears welled, not enough to fall, but enough to sting. Then she turned. Walked back down the porch. No drama. No exit speech. Just silence. And I stood there watching the woman who tried to break me walk away, not because I fought harder, but because I stood taller. These days, the kids still come around. The birdhouses are still up. The swing gate is fixed, reinforced, and thanks to the actual HOA, now part of the neighborhood's official child safety path. The two teens who used to wear those URSO vests, they stopped by last week. One brought cookies. The other asked if I'd write him a letter of recommendation for a local internship in community justice. I nearly dropped my coffee. But I said yes. Because that's what this whole mess was really about. Not fences. Not rules. Not fake badges or folding chairs. It was about who gets to say you belong. And I'll tell you this. I belong. Right here. On this porch. On this street. In this life. You might not wear a badge. You might not have a file cabinet full of laws and codes. But you've got a voice. And when someone tries to silence it with fear, title, or made-up power, you stand. You speak. You let the street speak with you. Because the loudest lie only lasts until one good truth stands up in the room. And I stood. Now it's your turn.